Hello there, you perfectly lovely little people. My name is Sarah, and this evening I am reading from 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith, and we are on to chapter 10. What they saw from the Folly. As the night wore on, they travelled through many pretty villages to a countryside wilder than they had seen yet. There were more woods and heaths, fewer farms, and so it was that Pongo would risk no shortcuts and stuck cautiously to the roads, which were narrow and twisted. The moon was behind clouds, so he couldn't read the few signposts that there were. "I am so afraid we may go through our village without even knowing it," he said, "for as we have not been able to send any news by the twilight barking, nobody will be on the lookout for us." But he was wrong. Suddenly, out of the darkness came a loud meow. They stopped instantly. Just ahead of them, up a tree, was a tabby cat. She said, "Pongo and Missis, I suppose you are friendly." "Yes, indeed, madam," said Pongo. "Are you by any chance the cat who helped find our puppies?" "That's me," said the cat. Thank you," said Mrs. The cat jumped down. "Sorry to seem suspicious of you, but some dogs just can't control themselves when they see a cat. Not that I've ever had any trouble. Well, here you are." "How very kind of you to keep watch for us, madam," said Pongo. "No hardship. I'm usually out at night. You can call me Tib. My real name is Pussy Willow, but that's too long for most people. A pity, really, as it's a name I quite fancy." "It suits you so well," said Pongo, in a courtly tone that he had picked up from the spaniel, "with your slender figure and your soft grey paws." He was taking a chance in saying this, for it was too dark to see her figure, let alone her paws. The cat was delighted. "Well, I have kept my figure, and it was my paws that got me the name Pussy Willow. Now, you'll be wanting a bite of food and a good long rest." "Please tell me if all is still well with our puppies," said Mrs. "It was yesterday afternoon when I last saw them, lively as crickets and fat as butter they were." "Could we see them, just a glimpse, before we eat or sleep?" said Mrs. "We can't climb trees as Mrs. Willow can," said Pongo. "You won't need to," said the cat. "The Colonel has made other arrangements. But you can't see the puppies before they're let out for exercise, and that'll be hours yet. Those bad uns are late risers. Well, come along, meet the Colonel." "A human colonel?" said Mrs. puzzled. "Oh, bless me, no. The Colonel's our sheepdog, a perfect master of strategy. You ask the sheep. He calls me his lieutenant." The cat was now leading them along the road, and Pongo asked how far it was to the farm. "Oh, we're not going to the farm now. The Colonel is spending the night at the Folly. Crazy place, but it's coming in very useful." The darkness was thinning, and soon the roads ran across a stretch of heath, on which, still some way ahead of them, a dark mass stood out against the gradually lightening sky. After a few moments, Pongo saw that the dark mass was a great stone wall. "There you are," said the cat. "Your puppies are behind that." "Looks like the wall of a prison," said Pongo. "Nasty place," said the cat. "The Colonel will tell you its history." She led them from the road over the rough grass to the heath. As they drew nearer, Pongo saw that the wall curved, as the wall of all rounded towers curve. Above it rose the trunks of tall trees, their bare branches black against the sky. "You'd think there would be a castle at least, and you would think there would be a castle at least inside the huge wall," said the cat. "And they do say that there was going to be, only something went wrong. All that's there now, well, you can see for yourself." She led the way to the rusty iron gates, and Pongo and Missis peered through the bars. There was now enough light for them to see some distance. Beyond a stretch of grass as wild as the surrounding heath, there they saw the glint of water, but strangely it seemed to be black water. Then they saw the reason why. Reflected in it was a black house. It was the most frightening house Pongo and Missis had ever seen. Many of the windows in its large flat face had been bricked up, and those that were left looked like eyes and a nose, with the front door for a mouth. Only there were too many eyes, and the nose and the mouth were not quite in the right place, so that the whole face looked distorted. "They've seen us," gasped Mrs. And it really did seem as if the eyes of the house were staring at them from its cracked and peeling black face. "Well, that's hell-hole for you," said the cat. She moved on and they followed her, around the curving wall. After a few minutes they saw a tower rising above the treetops. It was built of rough grey stone like a wall, and it was rather like a church tower. But there was no church. The tower simply jutted out to the wall. Some of the narrow windows were broken and their stonework was crumbling. The place was not yet a ruin, but it looked as if it would quite soon might well be one. Well may they call it a folly," said the cat. Mrs. didn't know what the word meant, but Pongo had seen a folly before and was able to explain. The name is often given to expensive old buildings built for no sensible reason, buildings that it was a foolishness to build. The cat meowed 3 times, and there were 3 answering barks from inside the tower. A moment later came the sound of a bolt being drawn back. "The Colonel's the only dog I ever know who could manage bolts with his teeth," said the cat proudly. Pongo instantly decided that he would learn to manage bolts. Come in," said the rumbling voice. "But let me have a look at you first. There's not much light yet." An enormous sheepdog came out. Pongo saw at once that this was none of your dapper military men, but a lumbering old soldier man, possibly a slow thinker, but wildly experienced. His eyes glittered shrewdly and kindly through the masses of grey and white woolly hair. "Glad to see that you are large Dalmatians," he said approvingly. "I've nothing against small dogs, but the size of all breeds should be kept up. Well now, what has been happening to you? There was a rare to-do on the twilight barking last night when no one had any news of you." He led the way into the Folly while Pongo told of their day with the spaniel. "Sounds a splendid fellow," said the Colonel. "Sorry he's not on the barking. Now, tuck in, you two. I provided breakfast just in case you turned up." There was plenty of good food, farmhouse food, and a deep round tin full of water. "How did you get it all here?" said Pongo, astonished. "I rolled the tin round from the farm, with the food inside it," said the Colonel. "I stuffed the tin with straw so that the food wouldn't fall out, and then I borrowed a small seaside bucket from my young pet, Tommy. The dear little chap would lend me anything. I can carry that bucket by its handle. 6 trips to the pond on the heath got the water here. Luckily it thawed yesterday. Drink up, plenty more where that came from." The cat acted as a hostess during the meal. Pongo was also always careful to address her as Mrs. Willow. "What is this Mrs. Willow business?" said the Colonel suddenly. "Pussy Willow happens to be my given name," said the cat. "And I am certainly a Mrs." "You've got too many names," said the Colonel. "You're Puss, because all cats are Puss. You're Pussy Willow, because that's your given name. You're Tib, because most people call you that. I call you Lieutenant, or Lieutenant Tib. I thought you liked it." "I like Lieutenant, but I don't like Lieutenant Tib." "Well, you can't be Mrs. Willow on top of everything else. You can't have 6 names. "I am entitled to 9 names. I have 9 lives," said the cat. "But I will settle for Lieutenant Willow with Puss for playful moments." "Right," said the Colonel. "And now we'll show our guests their sleeping quarters." "Oh, please," begged Mrs. "Could we just get a glimpse of the puppies before we sleep?" The cat shot a quick look at the Colonel and said, "I told them the pups wouldn't be out for hours yet." "Besides, you'd get too excited to sleep," said the Colonel. "You must both have a good rest before you start worrying." "Worrying?" said Pongo sharply. "Something wrong?" "I give you my word that there is nothing wrong with your puppies," said the Colonel. Pongo and Mrs. believed him, and yet they both thought there was something odd about his voice and the look the cat had given him. "Now, up we go," the Colonel went on briskly. "You're sleeping on the top floor because that's the only floor where the windows aren't broken. Want a ride, Lieutenant Willow? Good heavens, cat!" "If there's one thing I object to being called, it is plain cat," said the cat. "Quite right. I don't like being called plain dog," said the Colonel. "I apologise, Lieutenant Willow. Now, jump on my back unless you want to walk." The cat jumped on the Colonel's back and held on by his long hair. Pongo had never seen a cat jump on a dog's back with friendly intentions. He was deeply impressed both by the Colonel's trustfulness and the cat's trustworthiness. The narrow, twisting stairs went up 5 floors of the Folly, most of them full of broken furniture, old trunks, and all manner of rubbish. On the top floor was a deep bed of straw, brought up by the Colonel in a sack. But what interested Mrs. far more was the narrow window. Surely it must look out towards Hell Hall. She ran to see. Yes, beyond the treetops and a neglected orchard was the back of the black house, which was as ugly as the front, though it did not have such a frightening expression. At one side was a large stable yard. "Is that where the puppies will come out?" she asked. Yes, said the Colonel, "but it won't be for some time yet." "I shall never sleep until I've seen them," said Mrs. Yes, you will, because I shall talk you to sleep," said the Colonel. "Your husband has asked me to tell him the history of Hell Hall. Now, come and lie down." Pongo was as anxious to see the puppies as Mrs. was, but he knew that they should sleep first, so he coaxed her to lie down. The Colonel pulled the straw around both of them. "It's chilly in here, not that I feel it," he said. Then he sent the cat to start collecting food for the next meal. He began to talk in his rumbling voice. This was the story he told. Hell Hall had once been an ordinary farmhouse named Hill Hall. It had been built by a farmer named Hill. It was about 200 years old, the same age as the farm where the sheepdog and the cat lived. "The 2 houses are quite a bit alike," said the Colonel, "only our place is painted white and well cared for. I remember Hell Hall before it was painted black, and it certainly wasn't bad at all." The farmer named Hill had got into debt and sold Hill Hall to an ancestor of Cruella de Vil's, who liked its lonely position on the wild heath. He intended to pull the farmhouse down and build himself a fantastic house, which would be a mixture of a castle and a cathedral. And he had begun by building the surrounding wall and the Folly. The Colonel had heard all of this while visiting the vicarage. Once the wall with its heavy iron gates was finished, strange rumours began to spread. Villagers crossing the heath at night heard screams and wild laughter. Were there prisoners behind the prison walls? People began to count their children carefully. "Some of the stories, well, I shan't tell you just as you're falling asleep," said the Colonel. "I did hear them at the vicarage, but I will tell you something, because it won't upset you as it naturally upset the villagers. It was said that this Deville fellow had a long tail. I didn't hear that at the vicarage either." Mrs. had taken in very little of this and was now fast asleep, but Pongo was keenly interested. "By this time," the Colonel went on, "people were calling the place Hell Hall, and the Deville chap plain devil. The end came when the men from several villages arrived one night with lighted torches, preparing to break open the gates and burn the farmhouse down. But as they approached the gates, a terrific thunderstorm began and put the torches out. Then the gates burst open, seemingly of their own accord, and out came Deville, driving a coach and 4. And the story is that lightning was coming not from the skies, but from Deville, blue forked lightning. All the men ran away screaming and never came back. And neither did Deville. The house stood empty for 30 years, and then somebody rented it. It's being rented again and again, but nobody ever stays." "And it still belongs to the Deville family?" asked Pongo. "There is only Cruella Deville left of the family now, and yes, she owns it. She came back down here some years ago, but had the house painted black. It is red inside, I'm told, but she never lived there. She lets the Baden brothers have it rent-free as caretakers. I won't let them take care of any kennel of mine." Those were the last words that Pongo heard, for as the story ended, sleep wrapped him round. The sheepdog stood looking down at the peaceful couple. "Well, they're in for a shock," he thought, and then he lumbered his way downstairs. Oh, it's getting a bit creepy, but it's getting a bit exciting. Right, my little peaches, I hope that you've had a nice wash I hope you've cleaned your teeth, wash your hands, and snuggle into your bed and give yourself a great big squeezy cuddle. And I'll see you tomorrow evening, I hope.